Okay, everybody, we're back to doing some of the lessons in the book, and here we are with lesson 10, which is on audio. So I'm going to go ahead and open project and navigate to the lessons folder where I know it is on my computer. Opening up lessons and lesson 10. Select lesson 10, open it. And the first thing we'll do is save it as a working copy. Save as, lesson 10, working, save. And then mine opened up in the audio workspace. If yours didn't, go ahead and click on audio up here. And then go ahead and click on reset to saved layout. So that takes us to the default layout of this audio workspace. Okay, it opens up with the Theft Unexpected master sequence open. And we can see over here our bins, our project file. It's a different layout, so it's in a slightly different space. But go ahead and add this extra audio meter here. You see on the track header panel,
Excuse me.
there's a little audio meter there. Yours may not have it. Mine has it because I added it before. By the way, I've come to now, when I want to increase the size of a header, I've found the fastest way is just to double click on the track when I want to increase the size of a track, that is. So if you don't have this meter here, and you probably don't, go ahead and click on the timeline display settings and then click on customize audio header, and then we get a series of buttons. And what you'll want to do is grab the button that is the meter, and that is this one, track meter. Just drag it and drop it right on that header, and you may want to increase the size of the header before you are able to do this. But we can see also there are some of the other buttons, and it's always useful to hover over the buttons to see what it is that they do. So just extra controls that are available. All right, so go ahead and add that meter, and if you need to increase the size, you can always do it this way, or you can also grab the height, the edge of the track there to give it more height.
Excuse me.
But now we have a little meter right on the track header. Okay, so notice when we're in the audio workspace, we have the audio clip mixer right here in the source monitor, and we also have the audio track mixer. And I have never really used either of these outside of doing the lessons, but I love the possibilities, and the idea is that the clip mixer is where you can adjust clips in your sequence. The track mixer is where you can make adjustments to entire tracks, and this is partly why it's a good habit to have your audio on different tracks, you know, your different types of audio. So your dialogue is always on one track, your music is always on one track, voiceover, production audio, ADR, you can quickly fill up lots and lots of tracks. So it's good to have that organization. And so that's what these two windows allow you to do. Also, keep in mind that just as your video has certain settings on your sequence settings, so does your audio. So when we come up and go to new sequence, so you define this when you create a new sequence, then over here on we've got the sequence presets, we've got settings, and then we've got tracks. And this is where you define your final track output. And usually we've been creating sequence by dragging a clip to the new item icon. That makes a new sequence that matches the clip. So whatever audio setting your clip has, that's going to carry over to your sequence. But you can define them when you create a new sequence, and we can see the different master settings include stereo, which would be 2 right and left tracks, 5.1, this would be 6 different tracks, left, right, front, left, right, back, rear, and I believe subwoofer. There's also multi-channel, there's also mono, so there's a lot of choices, and this is where you configure those audio channels. So it's important to know where that's done, and I believe, maybe the book will verify this, but I believe once you set a certain sequence with a certain audio channel configuration that you cannot change that in Premiere Pro. So that's the one thing you can't change. Almost like with Avid Media Composer, the one thing you can't change is frame rate of a sequence. But here, the Audio Master, and that may be the case with Premiere also. You could, however, create a new sequence with the new settings and copy and paste everything from one sequence to another. It'll convert. But interesting to know that. So just be aware that your audio master track setting is something that you set up when you create a sequence. Alright, and one more thing we want to look at is the audio meters. We've had some experience with the audio meters in your previous projects. And we know that the typical range you want to look at is right over here in the yellow, somewhere -3 to -18. Typically, you want everything, all of your sound elements, to be balanced relative to one another. So over here on the meters, notice we've got it here. I also added the button to the track header, and we've got the track mixer also going. Typically, it gives you levels for each track. So here currently we have one track that, and we can see that over here, the one track. But in this track there are two channels. There's left and right. We see two waveforms. So that's what we're getting over here, left and right. And then over here we've got the master also. So when you're doing audio, everything combines into one master output. And we can configure these meters. If you just right click, you can give it a range. Let's say we want to look at a higher range of decibels. We can right click. I think the default is 60 decibel range, so we're looking at 60 total decibels. It's also interesting that notice the peaks. So notice how the lines stay there. So let's say you hear a loud sound when you're editing and you want to know where it got to. If you have your peaks set at static peaks, then that will remain, the line will stay there after the clip is done playing. So for example, if I go back to dynamic,
is this seat taken?
Dynamics ones disappear. It still does give you a peak, but it doesn't stay there. So that's one subtle difference. I think you want to stay at static peaks so that when you stop, you can kind of see the maximum level. Okay, now let's open up one of the audio clips and take a look at it. And I believe it is here in music. Yes, in the music folder, double click on Graceful Tenure, then the source monitor opens. It shows us the waveforms. And we know that we can zoom in and out, so plus and minus buttons, zoom in and out. So go ahead and also take a look at the options here under the audio source settings, the settings. Time ruler numbers, you can click on time ruler numbers, and that gives us information almost like time code. And there's also audio time units. So let's go ahead and activate both of those and then zoom way in. And if the sample rate is 48,000 kilohertz, which is fairly standard industry, 48,000 kilohertz to record audio, then I'm all the way zoomed in here. I'm looking at 1/48,000th of the audio clip. That's pretty amazing. So let me back out of there. Just the idea that you can have that level of precision and control is pretty amazing. So now I'm just zooming in and out. Play it. Sounds really nice. And I've mentioned a few times, music always comes in too loud. So typically you always want to bring in your music clip in the source, do a right click, and adjust the gain, audio gain right here. And then just make an adjustment here, adjust gain by, and you would use a negative sign, negative, let's say 6 or 9 or 12. Then this automatically brings it down to something that's more manageable. And there's a reason audio is recorded loud. It's so they can get the best possible sound of the music and less sound of the ambience of the room. So for now, let's go ahead and turn those both off. Just wanted to point those out. So show audio time units, you can uncheck, and then show time ruler numbers. So we've got a nice clean source monitor here. Okay, now let's open up a clip and take a look at the audio. Let's open up the HS John clip. And as soon as it opens up, as we know, it's showing us the video. We can always get to the audio by clicking on this waveform here. So we can toggle between video and audio, and also in the settings menu you can choose it here, composite video versus audio waveform. And there's also alpha, so if this happened to have an alpha channel, that's what we would look at. So you would use that when you're doing compositing and working with green screen footage. Also down here, in case you don't see the audio waveforms in your timeline, you can go to the settings menu, and make sure Show Audio Waveform is checked. And then there's a different type of waveform that you can also show, and that's by clicking on the timeline settings, not the settings menu. Clicking on the timeline settings and unchecking rectified audio waveforms. So in this way, we can see the audio is down the middle of the track. So sometimes it's easier to adjust your audio if it's like this. But I think the default is to check audio, rectified audio waveforms. Because sometimes when your audio is really low, you can't really see it. We can see it's very low against that. So if we have the rectified unchecked, then it's down the middle of a track, which makes it easier to see. So just a couple of viewing options there. Alright, one other thing to be aware of is the solo buttons. So if you only want to monitor one channel, you can solo it.
Excuse me.
Try the other side.
Excuse me.
Alright, and I believe you're aware that you can record a voiceover using the microphone icon here. Let me double click this, put the playhead at the start, and then push this. And you want to have your speakers turned down so there's no feedback. I think they'll probably give feedback. Let me start this. Testing 1 2 3.
Excuse me.
Testing 1 2 3. Okay, let me stop that. Then brings in the clip. Let's solo this. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Alright, so this is often a good way to record a temporary voiceover track. Alright, so let's look at some of the controls you have to manipulate your audio. Go ahead and open up the sequence called Excuse Me. And then here we have two clips, one of which is a single track stereo. You can see there's two channels within this one track. And then the other clip is two separate mono channels. So if I make these small, you can see there are indeed two separate clips. And if I hold down Option, then I can select them individually. But they're all part of this same clip. So these two clips have been interpreted differently. The first one is a single track stereo, and the second one is a dual track mono, two tracks that are mono. So let's select the Excuse Me clip, the first one, and then come up to the effect controls, and let's take a look at the audio controls we have here. And we can twirl down these triangles to see the controls. And we can see that the stopwatch is already blue on this, and this means that any change we make is going to involve a keyframe. And if we only make one change, for example, let me put the playhead at the beginning of this first sound.
Excuse me.
Let me put it at the beginning of that. If I grab the level and I lower it, notice the bar here goes down with it. So let me undo that. And it is helpful to make your audio tracks as wide as possible. And I think also zooming in is good so that you can really see the waveform.
Excuse me.
And so again, if I adjust the level here in the audio effect controls, then it adds a keyframe and it goes down. So you can keyframe changes. Notice also, so volume is the master volume of every channel on the clip, because again we've got a clip here, but there are two channels. Channel volume involves each individual side, so I can turn down the left side, and then let's look at the meter over here.
Excuse me.
And let me undo that, and again these buttons here will reset everything. Well, let me see. There we go. Okay, there, it's gone. Okay, well, let me undo that. I'm going to go Command Z until it disappears. I was kind of adding extra keyframes there. So instead, let me go to the right and drag this one way down, then watch the left side here.
Excuse me.
So you can see how we've got control over both. Let me undo that. And then we've also got the panner. But before we look at that, look at this clip in comparison. So if I Option click so that I only get one of these, notice there is no channel volume option here, and that's because this one clip only has one channel. So if I option click there, we've got the channel volume. Option click on this one, there is no channel volume. There's only volume and panner. So you can play around with these, and ideally you record your audio with maybe stereo microphones at least, or 5.1 microphones, and then those channels carry through in your sequence, and then when you export your sequence, the microphone you used to record what was coming out of the left speaker, that gets played out of the left speaker. So you really do have a lot of control over how your audio is set up, and also just seeing here how we can control the different channels within a clip. Okay, let's look at the gain controls that you have on audio clips. Let's open up the clip Graceful Tenure. It's in the music folder. And it's a music clip, so we see the waveforms. Let me just play it and see where it's hitting. We can see it's peaking around -3. So very commonly you will want to do this with your audio clips. You'll want to make an adjustment before you bring it into your timeline. And then you can still adjust it in the timeline. You can make any adjustment at any time. That's one of the great things about digital editing. So on this one, right-click in the timeline window, or you can right-click on the actual clip here. But I'm just going to right-click in the source window and say Audio Gain. And then on this screen, you can set gain to a parameter. In the past, we have adjusted it where you can lower it or raise it. You can also normalize max peak to, normalize all peaks to. Those have to do with when the waveform is peaking, it will make the peak uniform through a lot of different clips. So that's a way to quickly make an adjustment on all of your clips. Let's say you have an interview and your audio peaks on each individual clip don't match, so you can use this to sort of match everything, which is great. For now, let's just click Set Gain To, and in there type -12. And again, gain settings are always in the negative. When you get to 0, 0 is the max. You can notice on the meter here, 0 is the very top. So once you're at 0, you're clipping it, you're distorting your audio. So -12 is a good level. And if I click that, then right away it lowers it quite a bit. And let me play it. And now we can see it's perfectly going to max out at -12. And what that did was that probably took this highest waveform and then basically set that at -12. So really great control you have over your audio clips, the levels. Okay, now let's practice normalizing audio, which will apply changes to your audio clips based on an automated analysis. So let's open up Journey to New York. And here we see several different voiceover clips. So go ahead and pause your video right now and listen to each of these. And you'll see that they're all different levels. They don't really go together. So pause right now, listen to each one, and then come back. Okay, now that you've heard each one, it's clear they're all at different levels. When you hear them, they tend to max out at different levels on the meters. So let's normalize them. First thing we want to do is select every clip. We could do that by shift-clicking, or maybe try to lasso around just the audio clips here. Then from here, you can right-click on any clip and select Audio Gain, or a shortcut is G. Just push the G button. Then we get to Audio Gain. So we could go to Normalize Max Peak to, or Normalize All Peaks to. And let's go ahead and click that one and put in -8 decibels. So it's going to normalize all of the peaks in these clips to the same level on your meters. Now if we push OK, we can see now they're more even, the waveforms. So go ahead and pause your video again and listen to each one.
I was searching for something.
And you'll see that it's
say what it was.
pretty well matched up.
Suffice to say.
And that's all based on an automatic analysis. Okay, now let's practice the audio ducking feature, and that is automatically reducing the volume of a music track if there is also voiceover present. So let's go ahead and maximize the track height, and we can see there is a music track here.
I would know when I saw it.
So what we can do is use audio ducking to have the music automatically lower in volume whenever there's dialogue present. It's pretty amazing. Okay, we're going to use the Essential Sound panel for this. And again, like everything, we have to first select the clips. So let's go ahead and highlight all of the dialogue clips. And then we want to assign this as dialogue in the Essential Sound panel. So with them selected, click on Dialogue, and that assigns them as dialogue. So now let's click on the music track, and again, make sure the track header is big enough to where you can see it. And then assign this music. So once it's assigned to the music, let's go ahead and click on ducking, and we'll use these settings. We will duck against dialogue clips, so we're going to tell this music track to duck or lower in volume whenever there is dialogue. And we'll go ahead and have the settings at 6.0. For duck amount, let's put -8. We're going to tell it to lower by 8 decibels. And then fades, let's say 500. Alright. So as soon as I click on Generate Keyframes, take a look at the music clip. And now take a look at the audio levels. Let me zoom in a little bit. They are going up and down a little bit more. And they're not going up and down that much. So you could play with the settings, the sensitivity and whatnot, and then it would lower at a higher amount. So go ahead and actually listen to it, and you can actually hear
I couldn't say what it was,
the
but
audio goes down when the
suffice
dialogue
to say,
happens. And that's all automated. Okay, the book also talks about how to do a split edit, and we've already done this. Many of you did it really well in your dialogue projects. So let's go ahead and open up the Theft Unexpected sequence, and then the last edit. So the idea of a split edit or a J cut or an L cut, so split edits result in J cuts or L cuts. The key is to use the rolling edit tool. And we've got our clips, our individual clips, assembled next to each other. So I don't really hear the difference. There's actually a noticeable difference in ambience between these two shots. So to make it less abrupt, we can use a rolling edit tool to make a split edit. So if we click and hold the tool here and then select the rolling edit tool and go just to the audio. So we're going to hold down Option, click on the audio, move it a little bit to the left. Now the audio transition is not going to play over the video, so it's going to be a bit smoother. And I think it would be a good idea to also add a dissolve here. So I'm going to Shift D. I'm on a Mac and Shift D works. I think depending on your computer it might be Command D or Command Shift D. But let me go ahead and zoom in here. Now we see a nice dissolve, and now it's a split edit, so there should not be an abrupt audio transition when we go over this cut here. And this is a big part of having clean audio. It's adding the crossfades and split edits so that it's very smooth. All right. Okay, so getting back to clip levels and controlling the volume of clips, let's open up the Desert Montage sequence. Let me zoom in a little bit by pushing the plus sign. And we can see on this, let's go ahead and widen the tracks. Always really good to have really tall tracks when you're working on audio. So we can see that a keyframe has been placed at the beginning and a keyframe has been placed a few seconds in. That's resulted in a fade up, and we know you can do a fade or a dissolve by pushing Shift D here, but this is a dissolve accomplished, or it's a fade up accomplished by using keyframes on this audio bar here. They call this the rubber band, and this is the volume control. So there are two real controls over audio, gain versus volume. If you look at gain as the incoming, so if we right click on here, select audio gain, we can make adjustments to the incoming signal. But once we get to the outgoing or the volume, that's where this horizontal bar comes into play. So I can just click this horizontal bar, raise it up and down. We can see the decibel change there. Or what I like to do is the keyboard shortcut of the left and right bracket key. So that lowers and raises. And actually, if you hold down Shift while you do it, it does it in increments of 6. So you can also select the keyframes. Shift click the keyframes, raise those up. So again, it all comes down to the level of control you have over your settings. And then gain and volume can both combine to result in your final output. So you're always kind of looking in that area right around here. Okay, let's take a look at the audio clip mixer. So let's highlight the audio clip. Up here, if we're in the audio workspace, we're in the source window, which is the audio clip mixer. If I push play, I can see this fader going up and down. Did you notice that? So faders, universally, they control the volume up and down. So you can use this to generate keyframes. So let's put it towards the beginning. And if you click this button here that says Write Keyframes, so again, we're on the Audio 1 track. In our sequence, we're going to write keyframes to that. And as I play it, let's make some dramatic adjustments. And as soon as I stop playing, take a look at the audio keyframes that just showed up. It's really a lot, and you can adjust the time gap between keyframes, because in general it's easier to work with fewer keyframes than it is a whole bunch of keyframes. So let me try to undo that. Command Z. So if we go into Premiere Preferences, Audio, we have this minimum time interval thinning. If we check that and set it to 500 milliseconds, now that would be half a second, right? I could be wrong. Is 500 milliseconds half a second? Anyway, we'll say OK. And then let's do the same exact thing. Move the playhead towards the beginning. We'll say Write Audio Keyframes, push play, and then adjust the fader. Okay, so when I push stop, we can see now there are much fewer keyframes because of that setting that we made in preferences. So pretty interesting that you can do that. I've never used this, but I think I can see the value in being able to play something that's maybe set to your edits, and as you're playing it, you want to adjust the volume. And you can just write keyframes to allow it to do that. Okay, that's it for lesson 10, and that is a chapter that's all about audio in Premiere Pro, and this will take us into chapter 11 that has more to do with applying audio effects and some really cool stuff there. So go ahead and take a screenshot of your interface the way it is currently, and you don't have to do everything exactly as I do it. The main point is to show you what's possible in Premiere Pro. So go ahead and take a screenshot, and on the next page you can upload it.